Okay. Good evening. I'm David Smith, and this is Week in Review. This evening, we'll be discussing an update on SOPA and a new technological development by law enforcement in Michigan. We'll also be discussing the recent Supreme Court decision regarding ministerial exemption. This is a follow-up to a previous story that we reported on. And we'll also be discussing the recent cannibalization occurring in both the Republican and Democratic parties. Before we begin our program this evening, I'd like to introduce you all to a new sponsor of ours. Acronis Disk Director 11 Home is an all-new version of the most feature-rich disk management product available. If you're serious about maximizing disk use and data safety, it's never been easier to create hard disk partitions or resize, move, or merge partitions without data loss. Acronis Disk Director 11 Home includes powerful new features like Windows 7 support, dynamic disk and GPT disk support, spanning a volume across multiple disks, and much more. Visit www.acronis.com and look for the Disk Director 11 link on the front page. Use coupon code NDJDD15 for a 15% discount off your purchase. Well, gentlemen, interesting week, interesting things going on. Who would like to start? Eric's got a follow-up. Daniel's got a follow-up. Why don't you lead off, Eric?
You want me to lead off?
Yeah, your follow-up is on a story I think we covered in the first or second episode.
Yeah. Well, as we criticize the Supreme Court, I think we should also praise them when they do the right thing, and I was gratified to hear that this was a unanimous decision, that somebody up there did some historical thinking and some real thinking, or else we would have been plunged into a pre-Kenosha world if you can, if the state can dictate who a church's move.
Well, yeah, I heard that. That was a very serious and important decision that they had to make, and I too am glad that they made it unanimous, because it's the first time the court has ever actually addressed this issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like I said, I think they did the right thing. Religious freedom, of course, is the reason all the Puritans, the Catholics, everybody came over here originally. And if you want to go back even further to Kenosha, yeah, where where the secular authorities, the kings, were interfering in the bishops who was appointed bishop or pope. Like I said, this would have been a disaster if they had ruled the other way.
Remember the investiture controversy back in the Middle Ages, where
Yeah.
the state declared the right to determine who the clergy would be.
Yeah, and I hear the Catholic Church is having similar problems right now in China. They're wanting to be able to have some say in who gets appointed bishop and cardinal.
So
yeah.
what's led to
So
this
this is
particular court case in the first place? Is there a specific issue that's that's caused it to raise this far up in the court?
If you remember the story, Hossanah-Tabor Church, which is in Michigan, I believe, hired a woman who they hired as a teacher. She was then became a commissioned minister. The congregation voted her in as a commissioned minister. They had a formal religious ceremony, and her duty was to teach religion and a few secular subjects as well. And she developed narcolepsy, and of course had to leave her job for a period of time because of treatment for that condition. And when she came back, the church told her, well, we've hired someone else to fill that position, and so we're not going to be bringing you back. And she sued them under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it went to the Supreme Court because the church said, she's a minister. We have the right to determine her employment and duties, and when we'll release her and when we'll keep her. And the state has no ability to say anything about that, because that would be interfering with the internal operations of the church.
That makes sense, considering she did become a minister at that point, which which basically moved her from a standard government-controlled employee to a religious-controlled employee.
Oh, she's an actual minister of the church.
Correct.
Whereas the man maintaining the lawns and the grounds of the church is not a minister, he's an employee.
Right,
and therefore the rules regarding ADA and so forth would actually apply to that type of employment. But ministers have always been exempted from federal laws regarding employment because it interferes with the internal operation of the church.
I think this is an important philosophical point and political point to point out that the culture is prior ontologically than the government. The culture is the one that sets up the government to enact the culture's mores and aims. The government doesn't decide the culture's mores and aims.
Well, it seemed that the Obama administration was determined. You know, they pushed this one forward and were very aggressive. And I'm glad that they were smacked down so soundly by the court, because they wanted, I think this is one of those, you know, I think we have to admit that the administration is very far left-leaning, and they definitely wanted to get a foot into church hiring practices and so forth, you know.
Oh, yeah, they obviously believe the government's prior to everything. All sovereignty lays in the government. We're just all slaves of the government.
And this had
but no, the government's created by us to enact our aims, our mores, our values.
Yeah, not their political agenda with whoever happens to be in power. This was an important issue also in the fact that ministers who are, for example, gay or lesbian in a fundamental congregation, if it's discovered, they can be dismissed because they don't adhere to the teachings and practices of the particular denomination that they're supposed to be a minister of. And this removes the government from coming in and dictating to the church that despite your strongly held religious beliefs, we're going to force you to hire this person. because it's not an issue of civil rights as the court sees it. It's definitely an issue of religious freedom.
Now, what are some of the other
I was
ramifications?
gratified even the most liberal judges on the court, weighed in on the right side of this.
Yes. Well, that's one of them. That's an important one. If a person graduates from divinity school, gets ordained by the denomination, and is qualified to be a minister in every other way, but let's say the congregation, for example, a Methodist congregation in central Arkansas decides it doesn't, because of the culture of the community and the particular culture of that congregation, does not choose to elect a gay or lesbian minister, they cannot be forced to do so. Now, what the internal action of the conference...
example up in Chicago. Didn't an Orthodox church get rid of a bishop up there just recently?
I wouldn't be surprised. There was some scandal over some of the...
Yeah, if they go appeal to the government, that's it. The whole basis for the United States is unraveled.
Yeah, so it's very important that principle of the... And in fact, it even more firmly establishes the separation of church and state. That the state will not interfere in religious matters internal to the church. But it will defer to the particular church or denomination to their internal decisions and practices in their hiring of ministers of the church.
I just want to make sure our viewers and listeners understand, the government's our instrument. We're not instruments of the government.
Now, I'm kind of wondering, I'm waiting to see if every church secretary and the guy who tends the lawns and gardens and so on are now going to become commissioned ministers. Because the church has a protection then. They just make it this is a calling of the congregation. You're commissioned and set apart as a minister to the church to do these particular activities. And I think the court is going to have to visit that issue, because I'm certain that there are certain organizations and congregations that will try that. And the court's going to have to say, well, no, they don't perform religious ceremonies, they're not charged with religious counseling and pastoring and so on. The guy who's hoeing the rose bush is not a minister.
I'm just glad they reaffirmed the principle, and like I said, you can sort out a few ugly details.
Yeah, sometimes, every now and again, the court, as you said, the court does hit a home run, and on this one, they definitely did. And we're glad to see that they did that, because they seem to be attacking every other one of our rights. Freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of the press, at least freedom of religion still.
Freedom of our blogging and...
Yeah, at least this one freedom, the very first one in the Constitution, is protected in the Bill of Rights. So.
Yeah, and that's the very First Amendment, so we know the founders regarded this as one of the principal rights, if not the principal.
So that's good. That's a good story. I'm glad I'm glad you brought that to our attention, Eric. And we were able to know. Now let's follow this, because Justice Roberts, the Chief Justice, did indicate that he expected to revisit the issue in the coming years as certain wrinkles have to be ironed out, because there will be an attempt at some sort of abuse, I'm sure, by churches making ministers out of people who are really only employees and who should be protected by various statutes and legislation in that regard.
I guess the Catholic Church, if they can ever get enough monks and nuns and get back to having the monks and nuns do all the labor for them.
They'll have to do it, They'll have to... Unfortunately, they just can't inspire the vocations to religious life that they used to. You know, that's the real problem, and you wind up
Yeah.
with many lay people taking over those positions. And
Yeah.
of course, they're employees. They're not religious, and they're not
Yeah.
clergy.
Because when you and I were kids, if you went to a Catholic school, most of your teachers were still nuns.
Yeah. And
Now
now
it's just the opposite way.
and now you're lucky if you can find a nun as a director of religious education, and that's an employee position in the parish. That's not a clergy position or a ministerial position of any kind. So, all right, let's move on to our next topic. Why don't you bring us up to date on SOPA, Daniel? What's happening?
Sure. Well, this is not directly related to SOPA. It's actually the Senate's version, which is called PIPA. I have a, let me transition a little larger here. There is I read an article just recently by Amanda Payton. She's a blog article or a writer, or she has her own blog. And recently she contacted her own senator. You know, in between the Congress and the Senate, there's usually two versions of a bill, and each branch votes on it, on their particular version, and then the committee combines it all together into one bill, which is presented to the president. On the Senate side, it's called PIPA, P-I-P-A. I forget exactly what it stands for. Here it is, Protect IP Act. Similar thing, IP being, of course, intellectual property. And she contacted her senator, which just so happens to be Senator Schumer. And everybody loves Senator Schumer. And I've got a...
Yeah, we all know him.
And here's a little graphic of him.
I wish I could give him a Bronx raspberry, but... You know,
Well, what she did was she called up her senator and basically had one simple question for him. Why does the senator support this legislation? And she ended up talking to one of his aides, you know, basically the person on the other end of the phone who picked it up at his office. And it's amazing. His first response to the question was, well, he's a co-sponsor, so he's not changing his position. Just because you're a co-sponsor doesn't mean you have to fully support it. You can withdraw your support for it and not become a co-sponsor. And then, of course, not happy with that answer, she asked the question again. And the guy's response was, Senator Schumer is in favor of censoring the internet.
could you repeat that?
That is, censoring the internet.
Oh, okay.
That was his exact response. And, of course, she's sitting there in astonishment because, you know, the internet is part of free speech, publishing, and all of that. And basically he backpedaled a little bit and kind of tried to clarify, saying that Schumer is in favor of censoring illegal activities on the internet.
No, wait a minute, hold on. You don't censor illegal activities on the internet, you stop them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is not, you don't censor pornography, you stop, you know, child pornography, you stop it. You don't censor it where it's more acceptable, you just stop it. You know, the abuse, the illegal activities need to be stopped, no doubt. But not the free exchange of information that does not put anyone in danger.
I think this is a good illustration. All of our basic rights are under attack right now.
And this man Schumer is one of the sponsors of the Patriot Act, and you know, he pushed this stuff, and this is just absurd. You know, when he was a congressman, he was outrageous. Now that he's a senator, he's even more outrageous.
Basically, the position he seemed to be taking on it, and you know, he is in charge of that office. Therefore, anybody who answers that phone should be responding the way he would respond. They probably have a call sheet saying exactly what to say to certain things. And the fact that his aide has said this, basically, he's got the position where the government is giving rights to the citizens. Based on the way I'm reading this, it sounds like he has an arrogant position where, oh, you can't do anything unless I allow you to do it.
Well, that's the problem, because the rights in the Bill of Rights in our Constitution, our founding fathers did not say the government gives you any rights. The government is to protect the rights that you have naturally. They're given to you by God because you are a human being. That's why the Constitution says they are inalienable. They can never be taken from you. You can never lose them. They're always yours. And we must guard against the government stepping in and attempting to impinge upon those rights. Any movement by the government to impinge our rights in any way must be resisted and never tolerated. And it must always be broadcast far and wide so that people know.
Well, this is the arrogance of the left. Yeah, I heard that lady that wrote the book on the Obamas on the radio today saying that Michelle and Barack will think that we're the problem. We're the ones that aren't working hard enough for his vision.
Well, for my second story, I actually have this is. It seems to be their response. This is extremely favored by the Department of Homeland Security. They're very interested in this particular product. And one company, and here, let me pull up the graphic of exactly what it is. There it goes. It is it's an intelligent street light. And the town of Farmington Hills, Michigan, has just cut the ribbon looks like this is about a month or so old, but has cut the ribbon for setting these up in their town. It's a small town of about 80,000. Now, of course, here in Northwest Arkansas, that's pretty large. But these 80,000 people will now be monitored. They've quickly taken down any reference to the questionable activities of this device. One of them, which is not listed on their website, is it can record audio and capture video from these street posts, basically. They're linked together using a mesh technology. Now, from a tech guy perspective, I love this product.
I was looking at that, I have to tell you, and the only thing that came to mind was Eliza Doolittle singing, "Oh, wouldn't it be lovely?" It's just...
Yeah.
Well, this from a tech guy perspective, this is a very cool product. It has a lot of potential. One, it's using a mesh network. I researched this several years ago when I was helping a local police department with their internet connections. And their idea was you set up these little devices, and each device talks to each other device, and basically through a series of chains gets back to the home office where it has internet access. Well, in this case, they're not sharing internet based on this, but they are accessing the features of this lamppost, which include, it's got, a photo cell control so that it can dim the light. It's LED based, so you can save on energy costs. These are all the things they're using to sell this product to the various towns and shopping centers. And you can have music. There's speakers in it. It's got the image sensor, which basically means it can count pedestrians that are walking by. It can snap pictures of them. What they don't tell you and what they've taken off is the fact that they can record audio of people walking by. These images that they're capturing can then be sent through a facial recognition software, and you can actually recognize people walking down the street.
Well, you can just see Hitler and
Stalin,
grinning in the background. This is just,
Hitler and Stalin would just go into ecstasy, yeah.
This is the ultimate police state tool right here. Right here.
This has got to stop. We have got... it's one thing, and I understand the technological advances, but the abuses... You know, we may need to keep the technology developing because we can use it, but we need to prevent the abuses that follow in its wake. And of course, as Daniel was pointing out, they never tell you about the underbelly of the technology, the dark underbelly. They only tell you about the wonderful, useful things that it will do for you as a citizen. Of course, they tell the dark underbelly part to law enforcement, who of course want to spend huge amounts of money acquiring this.
Exactly.
So.
Well, I think this is going to be the challenge of this generation growing up, is how to take charge of our technology to serve our ends and aims, not to oppress us, not to control us, but us to control the technology.
I agree with you. But the openness of the upcoming generation with, you know, social networking and so on, they don't seem to really care what anyone knows about them. They don't have the concept of, you know, the government doesn't have a right to spy on you and to gather information, even if they have the ability to do so. And even if you're not doing anything that they should be looking at, they still shouldn't have the unfettered right to do so.
Well, the sovereignty of the individual goes away right then.
Yes.
Well, it links back to the whole brainwashing thing. You know, schools were set up, for the most part, to create workers, and this is just one extra step that they're adding in to make people very comfortable with the idea of being monitored all the time.
There's a very interesting series by Philip Collins, Collins. You can locate him on the internet, upon the panopticon that's being created, whereby we self-censor. You know, not much has to be done. We become self-censoring beings because we know we're being watched all the time, or so we believe we are. And people might want to.
Old idea.
Yeah, Bentham's idea. You know, about the redesign of British prisons, where the control house was in the center, and everyone was being watched because they were on the outer perimeter. The cells and the guard could look at you at any time, and know what you were doing. So it created a self-censoring behavior. And the same happens when we get the idea that we're always being watched. We censor our own actions, and the government doesn't need to do it. You know, so it's a...
Yeah, but the only problem I see there is this is an ever-escalating issue, because if you're self-censoring and you are a bad person, then you're going to find ways to be bad.
Well, we watched 1984 after last week's broadcast, and there was a good instance of, you know, a society where self-censoring was inbred. You know, you always thought you were being watched because the TV was always on. You know, and who knows, that maybe they only actually monitored 1 out of every 100 TVs, but everyone else thought they were being watched. You know, and...
Well, the trouble with a self-censoring or any censored society is it becomes a static society. That's the whole idea of a free society, is you're going to put up with some troubles, but you get new ideas.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be a problem. I agree with you, Eric. People are going to have to find a new way to ensure that they have a modicum of privacy and for self-development, self-expression. You know, if you feel that you're always being watched and therefore need to conform to what Big Brother wants you to do, there isn't going to be creativity. And we'll wind up in neo-feudalism rather than in the new civilization that is possible because of this technological development. So we can't allow the oligarchy that's developed to take control of the technology and use it against us.
And I've to add a side to that, I've heard that even though our children are scoring better in standardized tests and creativity, we've dropped down to nothing.
Yes, that's one of the... You know, standardized testing, it's like, you know, ring a bell, get a cookie. You know, Pavlovian, at its worst. You know, it's just Pavlovian
Yeah.
That B.F. Skinner
It's just training.
behaviorism.
Yeah,
It's
like
terrible,
training.
terrible, very dangerous, very dangerous. And these people are in charge. We have a whole Department of Education devoted to this. This department is the first that needs to go. The very first that needs to go. Federal government should have no say in what is essentially a local issue. Each local jurisdiction and district should have its own education program based on the needs of the community. A farming community has a particular need for farmers. A industrialized urban community needs a certain type of worker, and of course, pedagogues need a different type of environment. But an education should be suited to each. And that way society works. And of course, you're able to move. That's the miracle of America. You're not trapped in a feudal order. You're able to move anywhere you like to move based on your own initiative and ambition.
Yeah, and these ideas get out, and people find new applications in other communities.
Well, this is one idea where technology can actually help with that particular issue. With a good internet connection, since education seems to be moving to the internet, and I mean, you can go online and take an MIT course if you wanted, for example. If education actually moved and classes moved online, even for the younger kids, they don't have to move anywhere to get access to whichever kind of education that they want. Do they, they want to have a technology education? Do they want to have a farming education? It's entirely up to the kid in what direction they want to achieve or go. And that's where one example where you have basic education going all the way up to 6th grade, and then from there, the kid can start deciding specializations. Have a farming education course, a direct set of course or classes, and which leads you on that course to your end goal, no matter where you are in the country.
And that leads to, as Eric was explaining, individual development and expression. Mm-hmm. You get to choose for yourself and what your interests and ambitions are.
Well, a lot of people are finding out that home-based, I forget what it's called, home-based education, where the parents are actually taking an active role in becoming the teacher to teach their kids instead of sending them to public school. There's a whole community growing up around that. Everything from having sports teams based on home-educated kids to bands and cheerleading and the whole 9 yards.
The state of California is trying to declare that to be child abuse. Because one, they don't get the money for that child in the public schools from the daily attendance, mm-hmm. and secondly, they're not able to indoctrinate these children with this
I think
behaviorism.
California's going to change our state motto to the stupid state.
Well, we won't be far behind here, I'll tell you. Well, that's just.
Well, that's interesting because New York is actually working on implementing what I spoke about, having an online home-based education.
Well, you're going to see this pretty soon because California's already losing population, and our budget is, guys in other states can get a good laugh out of it. Yeah.
Well, moving on to my topic. I have a cartoon that expresses it. I don't know how much everyone has been. I'm sure everyone's kind of been following the New Hampshire primary. It appears that this is going to be just an absolutely fascinating electoral year because it seems that both the Republicans and the Democrats are determined to cannibalize each other. Before they even get to fight their opponent, they're going to wind up eating each other alive. It's absolutely amazing.
Well, is this the self-censorship?
Well, no, Newt Gingrich is attacking Mitt Romney for being a free market capitalist.
A venture capitalist, yeah.
Which is what Newt Gingrich was all about when, in fact, he was a super hyper free market capitalist when he was Speaker of the House. Now he's opposed to it when he's trying to win the Democratic or the Republican nomination. Okay, but this is a fundamental plank of the Republican Party. These people are eating each other alive, claiming, Romney, because when he headed Bain Investments, he was costing people jobs. He's a bad, evil venture capitalist. And it's like, what?
Well, the new, nice, even-tempered Newt didn't last long, did it?
No, it didn't. No. It didn't.
We're back to the old.
As we can see, he'll stoop to any level and take any position on a temporary basis in order to get elected. This is incredible. I can't believe this.
Well, if I may, I'm going to offer a short defense here of Mitt Romney. And what we're really doing in the United States is electing a CEO. And Mitt Romney, when he was the head of Bain Capital, did exactly what a CEO is supposed to do. He made money for his shareholders. And that's the kind of person that we want here, because we're all like shareholders in this country called the United States.
Yeah, but did he do it?
This is what we need.
Did he do it for his shareholders or for his investors?
His shareholders.
Was it a public company?
Yeah, the Bain Capital, yeah.
Okay. I didn't know.
Yeah. And this is exactly what we need, is somebody who's going to work hard for us, is going to make deals and cut the waste and get this country working again.
Well, the only thing I'm worried there is who is he going to be working for? Is he going to be working for the American public, which is the shareholders, or is he going to be working for the corporations which are investing in it?
Well, I'm hoping he's going to be working for the American public. He's going to see. Somebody should ask him this question, of course. I hope he sees himself and the next president, whoever it is, even if it's not Mitt Romney, as the CEO of the United States, and each of its citizens as a shareholder, and that it's his job to go out and make this country prosperous.
Well, the presidents of late have become commander-in-chief. That's the role they like to play, when their actual role is CEO, Chief Executive Officer of the United States. That's why we call him the Chief Executive. And, they don't seem to want to play that role. They want to seem to play the role of...
they like the commander part more than the chief part.
Yeah. Yeah, they seem to see themselves as everything except what they are, is basically head janitor to clean up the messes and keep everything running.
But this,
we're not electing Alexander the Great or Napoleon or anybody else like that.
The other interesting thing, we're witnessing the fight within the Republican. They're trying to find a candidate. I understand that certain evangelical pastors are meeting in Texas to try to find a candidate that they can all rally around who is not Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
Because they're not opposed to his experience or his qualifications as a governor or chief. They're opposed to him because of his theology.
He's a Mormon.
He's a Mormon. And that, I guess, is, to these screwballs who are trying to create a theocracy out of the United States, we have to get these people out. They need to be isolated and marginalized in the political system. They are Christian Reconstructionists. They are dangerous. They are enemies of the Republic. They do not even want the Republic. They want it to be a theocracy. And we need to get these people out. They need to be exposed, and they need to be driven out of the political process. They are a danger. They took over the Republican Party in 1980, and for the past 22 years, it's been a disaster.
Yeah.
It's been a disaster.
Yeah. I just want to add one qualification so you don't think I'm the total endorsement of Mitt Romney. I think Huntsman and Santorum deserve their turn, and let's let the primary process go on.
Oh, yeah, they all deserve it. Santorum, though, I want him out because he is the, his main concern are these social issues. That is not what is plaguing the country right now. If we were at peace and in economic prosperity, fine. Discuss those issues. Right now, we have serious issues of war and peace, and the financial prosperity or decimation of the nation. I don't care if you have an abortion. Well, I do care if you have an abortion. I'm totally against it. At all times and under all circumstances, I think it's an evil. But then that the issue of culpability for the woman is an entirely different issue. The act itself.
Well, a lot of this should be dealt at the local level, like we were talking about.
These are local issues that need to the states ought to determine this issue for themselves. This is not a national issue, and this is not a thing that's going to make you. It's not going to put food on your table.
No.
If we have a constitutional amendment against abortion, is it going to bring you your next meal?
No.
Well,
If we have a balanced budget,
like I said,
and people competent to run the government, it's going to help promote the environment that will put a meal on your table because you'll have a job.
Yeah, whenever these things come down from the federal government, they become tyranny. Like I said, this is all has to be done at the local level. Abortion, gay rights, all this belongs at the local level.
And this is, they keep this. This is the way the oligarchy at the top plays us off against one another. They play the Republican right, the fascist, off against the Democratic left, the socialist. Or Marxist, if you want. And that's the way they keep this constant. And this is a prime example of it. Except the problem is that they're winding up eating each other. Another interesting observation this week, the upcoming primary, Democratic primary in South Carolina, there's only supposedly one candidate on the ballot to vote for Barack Obama. But Democrats are encouraging people, a certain portion of them, are encouraging other Democrats to write in Hillary Clinton as a candidate. The Democratic Party, I guess Obama's not Marxist enough for them, is wanting them to write her in. They're dissatisfied with their own candidate. We may have a Johnson-McCarthy situation here. If she gets enough write-ins, Obama may have to withdraw. Like Johnson, I will neither seek nor will I accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
Now, what happened back then? Can you
Edmund McCarthy ran. He was a Democrat. He was written in as a candidate to oppose President Johnson in the 1968 election. And Johnson realized he wasn't going to win. He was not going to win. If he ran, the Democrats were definitely going to lose. And he might even lose the nomination. He might not even be the party's candidate. So he withdrew and said he would not run for another term. It was that bad. I think people were so dissatisfied. And remember, we had the Vietnam War. We were going into a recession. So a very similar situation.
The Democratic Party, I hate to say it, is a party that doesn't seem to stand success. It's always best as a protest movement. Whenever they're actually succeeding, they seem to self-destruct.
Well, yeah, it's like, why would you do it in the middle of, and here, but they're doing it, and it looks like there could be and this may be them trying to force Obama to take Hillary Clinton as his running mate. But these people actually want her to run as the candidate for president. So this cannibalism that's going on, and it's so early in the electoral process that...
well, that's going to be entertaining anyway.
Yeah, it's going to be entertaining. Adelson gave a huge amount of money, if you remember him, the billionaire casino builder, gave like $5 million to the Gingrich Super PAC, and he still couldn't come in. About, what is he, fourth in New Hampshire? He still couldn't do it.
Like me and you and everybody was waiting to see if the new, nice, reasonable Newt Gingrich could last, and it just didn't.
No, he's done so poorly in the showing. I think if he doesn't pull it out in South Carolina, it's over. for him.
Yeah, well,
It's just
he
over.
just, like I said, people like you and me who would have been happy to support him, he just self-destructed in my eyes.
Just destroyed himself. But
Well,
Yeah.
everybody, maybe this is going to be like similar to Hell's Kitchen, where my wife was watching that show. And usually the guy in the back that's the quietest is usually the winner. And let's just hope that's the case, because everybody is talking about Newt and Mitt and their complaints, and everybody's constantly basically ignoring the second runner-up in these primaries, which is Ron Paul. He seems to be kind of the write-off. Even the major media is saying, well, if you exclude Ron Paul...
Well, the problem there is that Ron Paul, his positions are not acceptable to the oligarchy that runs things, that chooses our... Because always remember, our president is not elected. They are selected. And we get the illusion that we get to vote and have a say, which, of course, is nonsense. Because the one person that they want to get in there will... One or the other. Either of them is acceptable to the oligarchy because they've been chosen by the people at the top. And therefore, our votes really don't matter, because, you know, if we would write in our votes and take back the process...
Mickey Mouse would have been our president.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse. Yeah, Mickey Mouse, I think, has won every election since 1933 or something.
Yeah. Well, this brings out, we talked about Spangler 2 weeks ago or so, that this paradigm is crumbling. This is going to be the challenge of our generations, is to come up with a new paradigm to accommodate the technology and make us masters of our technology and not servants of it.
And that's what scares the oligarchy, because we're rebelling against the return to a neo-feudalism that they're trying to establish. And people are waking up, they're seeing what's going on, they're becoming informed. That's what this SOPA and PIPA are all about. It's not really about intellectual property rights. It's about shutting down the internet. It's about censoring it, where they determine what information you can have and what you can know. That's why this is so dangerous, and we must oppose this.
It's all about control.
Yeah, it's people controlling, and the sooner you wake up to the fact that when they ring the bell, you don't have to go for the cookie. We're on the way to a brighter day and a new future. So, but this I thought was just fascinating, as these parties just are devouring each other. You know,
it was just the Democratic Party. I mean, Obama's been a failure by every metric. And
he's just an absolute disappointment to the people who put him in. There's been no change, no transformation. He's bought and paid for by Wall Street, and now everybody knows it. And people are just done.
And on top of that, he's incompetent.
He's an embarrassment to us around the world. You know, he just is not qualified by instinct or education to be the chief executive.
And he's arrogant. He's just everything you don't want.
He's everything we don't need or want, and it's time we definitely got rid of him. But I can tell you, if the Democrats make the mistake of nominating Hillary Clinton, you will get every single Republican and conservative voter to the polls, and you will lose massively.
Oh, if they do that, like you said, this McCarthy, they're going to destroy the whole Democratic Party. Don't expect there to be a Democratic Party in 2016.
Yeah, it will just dissolve, and it will become, the ultra.
They're going to have to. Yeah, they're going to have to found another party. This will just kill it. I mean, it's already dying in areas. Republicans never have had a lot of registered members, but the Democratic registration is going down to almost nothing in some areas.
Yeah,
it just will not be a functioning party any longer.
Well, this will be a very interesting thing to watch as they continue. Let's keep an eye on South Carolina primaries next week. Let's see what happens, and what develops out of this, because they've got to come to a place where the Republicans can agree upon a candidate, and if they have to get rid of and isolate and exclude the religious right. The people whose only concern is about issues that are not of any importance at this time. They have to get beyond that. These Christian Reconstructionists are a danger to the Republic and need to be sidelined and
this seems to be the
eliminated
transition point to your author, who's offering a radically new perspective.
Yeah. Author for this week, Joseph P. Farrell. Very interesting gentleman. I'd encourage our viewers to visit his website, GizaDeathStar.com. Dr. Farrell was born in South Dakota. He got his BA degree here at John Brown University, just a few miles up the road from our studio. He received his MA from Oral Roberts University in Oklahoma. And he then went on to attain a doctorate in philosophy from Pembroke College at Oxford University. He's a theologian. He's also an amateur physicist. He's a classical musician playing the organ and the harpsichord. He's a composer of classical music. And he is also a voluminous author. He writes about 2 or 3 books a year. I mean, he is an incredible researcher. He does impeccable and incredible research, which is due to his academic training in the classical style of a British university. But his books are just incredible. I want to encourage you to read them all, but I want to recommend a few to you so that you can understand the history of the world since the Second World War, which is very important to understand for understanding what is going on right now. He has a couple of books, and I'd recommend them to you. First one, SS Brotherhood of the Bell. It's about the development of Nazi technology prior to and during the Second World War. They were much farther along than we were. Very developed. They had technotronics, miniaturization that we wouldn't get until after we got their technology as part of the booty at the end of the war, and were able to develop it. He demonstrates that in that book with a special device called the Bell, which the Nazis had been working on and which may have been involved with developing anti-gravity technology. I'd also recommend that you read Nazi International, which he's written, which tells you what the Nazis were up to, how they secreted much of this technology off to South America following or prior to the end of the war, and divided the remainder between the Americans and the Russians, so that they could play us off against one another in the development of this technology. And we got the nuclear technology and a lot of the enriched uranium that the Nazis had at the end of the war, and the Russians got a lot of the technotronics, the miniaturization, and so on, which put them a little farther ahead of us in the development of the components of warfare. I'd also recommend to you his book, Genes, Giants, Monsters, and Men. Very interesting book, again, revolving around the Nazi medical experiments, how far they developed, what they were doing, and how it has had an effect on our own genetic engineering programs in the modern age. Very frightening to find out what they've been doing and what's been happening. He has recently published a book called Grid of the Gods, which kind of ties together. Each of his books is written in a manner to build on the previous volume. So he does recommend that you read all of his books in order, because it's all part of one big picture. But you can read those ones I recommended to you separate from one another. He wrote one book, Roswell and the Reich, which set the hair on fire of a lot of people in the UFO research community, because his point of view is that nothing about these supposed UFOs and their encounters and their descriptions and so on requires any appeal to aliens or alien technology. It was all technology that had been developed or was in the process of development by the Nazis, by the Americans and the British and so on. And he makes it clear that he is not saying categorically that there is not an alien influence, but he's saying that all the technology is explainable by purely terrestrial means. So I'd recommend that you read that one. If you are a person attached to the UFO religion, I would warn you, this will probably set your hair on fire and just give you a real bad night, because it will overturn and challenge many of your treasured beliefs. Recently, the most recent book, Yahweh the Two-Faced God. Book I haven't read. I'm going to try and get a hold of it. It's just come out last week, I think. And it will be a challenge to Christians, Muslims, and Jews about our understanding of the Bible, what these stories mean, what they're telling us. Definitely will give you a new perspective and will challenge you to think outside the conventional religious box. So I would encourage everyone to get those. That book, especially Yahweh the Two-Faced God, as we're moving into a new civilization and new understanding, new technology, we have to understand how the old technology may have been used through religion to perpetrate a control mechanism over the populace. And this does not in any way challenge the existence of God. It challenges how religion as a system has been used as a psychological operation to control the population.
I just have one question for you. When I looked him up, he's obviously a learned man, and just to reinforce that, maybe you should mention something about his translations.
Yes, he did his thesis on Saint Maximus the Confessor. He was a professor at the Orthodox Theological Seminary of St. Tikhon. He's also a member of the Graduate College of Theology in California. But his translations have been, and you can find his book on St. Maximus the Confessor, I believe, on Amazon or on
Abe Books.
Abe Books would have it. He's also written a large volume which explains the schism between the Western and Eastern Church, very profound. And if you really want to understand the division between Christianity, you need to read that book, and you can find it on his, or the link to it. He doesn't own the copyright on it anymore, but you can find a link to the publisher. And but his translation work has been exceptional. Of course, he speaks Greek, Hebrew, Latin, a number of languages which are required to gain the degree in patristics. And contrary to popular belief, patristics is a very broad-based subject. You have to have knowledge of history, theology, dogmatics, canon law, civil law, history. It's a very broad-based subject. So, and he's an excellent scholar. He does a lot of his work now with a fellow Oxford graduate, Dr. Scott DeHart. They've taken to collaborating on several books. The last several books he's published were in collaboration with Dr. DeHart, as was the Yahweh the Two-Faced God text.
So he's a man definitely to be taken seriously.
Yes,
because some of this stuff sounds wild at first sight, but he's...
Yes, but if what you need to understand is he is taking science and applying it and trying to understand ancient text as possible metaphors for knowledge that existed prior to the writing of the text. So the authors of the text are trying to convey a message that had been passed down to them, but that they did not have direct contact with. So he is a believer in a ancient civilization of high technology. He believes we may even now, in our own day, be coming to a parallel status with that ancient civilization. And so he's also written a book on the plot to kill JFK, LBJ and the plot to kill JFK. So for all of you Kennedy assassination theorists, you might want to look at this. He brings up an interesting angle on that as well. But he's an excellent author. He's an excellent scholar. And I'd encourage you all to look at his website, get his books, most of which you can purchase directly from his website. And I think a number of them are now available on Kindle or on Nook as well.
So definitely a perspective we should all look into.
Yes, yes. He is definitely someone who will broaden your perspective and increase your understanding of fields, even if you don't agree with his conclusions. Nonetheless, the research that he has done is just incredible, and it is footnoted to within an inch of its life. So it's not this unsubstantiated scholarship.
I think this is an important point to be made, is we have to make as many connections as possible. One of the problems that our civilization is facing is too much specialization.
Yeah. So
we need a much broader view, and this sounds like a guy who's definitely going to give it to you, even if you disagree with much of his work.
Well, next week, Eric is going to cover the author R.J. Collingwood. He is a philosopher. His principal work was The New Leviathan, if you want to take a look at that prior to next week's show. And The Idea of History, again, R.J. Collingwood, Collingwood. Once again, I'd like to refer you to our new sponsor, Acronis Disk Director 11 Home is an all-new version of the most feature-rich disk management product available. If you're serious about maximizing disk use and data safety, it's never been easier to create hard disk partitions or resize, move, or merge partitions without data loss. Visit www.acronis.com and look for the Disk Director 11 link on the front page. And use the coupon code NDJDD15 for a 15% discount off your purchase. We would like to thank you all for joining us this evening. We hope you'll join us again.
One more point. I have a new posting on my blog on Heidegger if anybody's interested.
Okay. And that's it for this evening, folks. Thank you again. I'm David Smith. This is Week in Review. Seriously, we don't believe Iran is building a nuclear bomb.